Ask the First Selectman. That's John Zagrodzky. He's joining us again, as always, to take your questions. Email them in. We need your questions. I'll give you the address at the end. This particular person says, in really cold weather, I've seen kids skating on Tilly Pond and on the frozen pond by the Rings End Bridge. Is that safe, especially if there's been a thaw? Who decides whether ice skating is safe and how is it enforced? I'm worried about kids or adults slipping through the ice and getting hurt.
So that's a great question, and not one that's got a super clear and simple answer, but I'll go through the components of this. So first of all, anytime you've got a spat of cold weather and people who live in New England, they're going to put on skates and they're going to get on the ice. It's a fact of nature. It's something that everybody is interested in. And when we had the particularly cold weather here a couple of weeks ago, I have seen upwards of 30 people out skating on Tilly Pond, and actually to see that and be in New England and see people ice skating, it's super cool, especially for somebody like me coming from Texas, where that's an alien concept. What the town does is that we do take samples from frozen ponds like that and check for depth. The problem is that there's not really any kind of one standard that says, okay, this much ice is exactly what you want, because for a few reasons. One is if there's a lot of snow or frost on that ice, sometimes the way that it's frozen is not as solid as if it's just simply a clear surface. And so looking at the ice that's there and trying to get a sense for whether it's truly load bearing ultimately is a judgment call. There's not sort of a clear standard that we can apply every time. The other problem is that changes. So if we have several days where it's extraordinarily cold, yeah, it's probably fine. Or I've got a couple of days in the upper 30s or 40s, and then it's cold again. It keeps changing. And so to have our staff out there kind of trying to check that and having a clear point of view that says 3, 2, 1, up, no, it's now no longer safe, everybody off the ice, and to manage that and enforce it, especially when you'll have parents that'll come up there that says, look, I've been skating on ice like this since I was a kid, and I know whether it's safe or not. And for you to tell me I can't skate on that, you can see the conflicts that would come up if we had sort of an enforcement patrol out there that's drilling core samples and trying to come up with a clear answer that says this is or is not safe. I mean, there's just not a practical way to both make the decision as to whether the ice is safe and then to reasonably engage motivated skaters as to whether this is good or not. I think the one good thing about something like Tilly Pond and other places in town is that those bodies of water are not very deep. And so if someone does fall, I mean, it's not like they're going to vanish under the ice. I mean, they're probably going to be standing there if they do in a lot of those spots. And so I don't think in that regard it's particularly dangerous. One thing I would say is that we do have signs posted in these places. And if it looks like we've got a shallow spot, say a Tilly Pond, there was one into that where the ice was thinner. And I think even the skaters out there recognized that and stayed away. We do post that, and we will send people out periodically to remind people about thin ice and to be careful with that. But having a program where we've got clear and objective standards for determining ice safety, and then town staff at every sort of body of water out enforcing that is a practical matter, not something that we can really do. What I would say is look, there's a skate at your own risk. There's ride bikes at your own risk. There's lots of things that we all kind of do at your own risk. And I'm not saying that you should always rely on that, but just go out and use your best judgment. And anytime you're up in New England, you're going to have issues that you need to pay attention to, right? If it's frozen overnight, like it was on my driveway this morning, there was black ice out there and I could see it. And I needed to go down and move my wife's car. And so I put on my ice cleats. And sure enough, there was ice. If I hadn't had them on, I would have fallen. But there's no sign out there telling me, make sure you put on your ice cleats, otherwise you could slip and fall. So there's a certain amount of responsibility I would encourage everybody to take with this and to be as careful as possible, particularly with children. We'll do all we can as a town to try to help with that. But ultimately, it has to be a shared responsibility.
John Zagrodzky, our First Selectman, answering your questions right here on TV 79. If you have a question for the First Selectman, send it along. We'll be glad to ask it. Just email it to DarienTV79 at gmail.com.